After 12 years, my daughter-in-law's shocking plan to evict me was exposed by a lawyer's amazing. Martha Johnson could hardly breathe as she stood in her kitchen, surrounded by the sweet, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread. For the past 12 years, this small artisan bakery had been her sanctuary, a place where flour dust mingled with love and memories. Yet today, her heart felt heavy with betrayal. The laughter that once echoed in her home had transformed into whispers, shadows flickering between walls that bore witness to her unwavering support. Her son, Greg, and his wife, Melissa, had seemed like family, yet now they felt like strangers plotting her undoing. Martha thought back to the countless evenings spent at the dinner table, where she had lovingly shared her home, her dreams, and her resources with them during their financial struggles. Hadn't she sacrificed so much to ensure their comfort? Now, as a real estate developer dangled promises of wealth in front of Melissa, a sinister plot began to unfurl. The news hit her like an icy wind. It wasn't just about money, it was about her very heart and home. Melissa had concocted a plan to evict her, claiming the space was required for their growing family. Martha's hands trembled as she kneaded dough, each push a struggle against the despair that threatened to swallow her whole. How could the woman she treated like a daughter turn against her so easily? She felt a suffocating weight pressing upon her chest. The realization crashed in her like a tidal wave. Her sanctuary was slipping away, and in its place an empty battleground loomed. She felt stuck, shaking between loyalty and self-preservation, care and cold calculation. Why did the family she had fought so hard to support now seem like a pack of wolves? In that moment of raw anxiety, a spark of determination ignited within her. She remembered her late husband's will, which she had always regarded as mundane paperwork. As she sifted through the papers sitting in disarray on her desk, she found a hidden clause stipulating her unyielding right to the home. It was a lifeline, an ember she couldn't afford to extinguish. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Martha wrestled with newfound hope, desperation loomed over her like thunderclouds. She reached out to a young lawyer who exuded fierce passion, a contrast to the avarice that encircled her family.
With every phone call, each shared word, Martha felt a flicker of empowerment she hadn't experienced in years, yet each spark felt dwarfed by the imminent storm. The thought of confronting Melissa weighed heavily on her, forcing her hand into the dough, each press a reminder that she was now on the offensive. As the confrontation inched closer, Martha's heart raced, her pulse drumming against the silence of her thoughts. The love she felt for her family twisted into a knot of rage and sorrow, each breath a reminder of the betrayal. Could she face the woman who had taken everything she held dear? With her home suddenly at risk and her identity crumbling like stale bread, a thought struck Martha. This fight was not just about the house. It was about reclaiming her life. How far was she willing to go? As her resolve hardened, the uncertainty lingered, raising one burning question in her heart. Could she truly transform her relationship with her family, or would these revelations shatter the bonds that once held them all together? The days that followed felt like a marathon of rising tension, each moment stretching with uncertainty. Martha surrounded herself with the familiar warmth of her bakery, using its rhythm to calm her racing thoughts. The dough became her ally, each fold and rise a meditation on resolve. With every loaf baked, she crafted not just bread, but a strategy, each punch of the dough pulsing with her growing determination. Sitting at her kitchen table, the will lay open like a map leading her on a path of self-discovery. The clause granting her the right to stay was more than a legal document. It was a confirmation of her place, not just within the walls of her home, but in the world she created. It was a visceral reminder that her contributions meant something, that her sacrifices were not in vain. Could she transform this into a strength that allowed her to confront Melissa with dignity? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over her workspace, Martha picked up the phone and called her lawyer, Laura. Her voice, steady yet emotional, sliced through the heaviness. "I'm ready. Let's discuss the next steps." Each word carried the weight of her decision, marking her commitment to this fight. Laura's voice was a balm to Martha's worries as she outlined what Martha had to prepare for the upcoming confrontation. They discussed the documents, the strategic angles they could take, and the emotional fortitude Martha would need to maintain. There was no turning back now, not after coming so far. Martha couldn't shake the thought of Melissa's betrayal. Could she confront the woman who was previously a source of joy, now transformed into a formidable adversary? The boundaries of love and loyalty thinned, making her stomach churn. It was essential to remain focused on her rights, but the emotional connection stung.
Still, as the baker began to craft her favorite pastries, memories flooded back of laughter, warmth, and shared goals. Those moments became ancient echoes against the harsh reality of her present. Time blurred as she filled her display cases with delights that resonated with nostalgia, each pastry a chapter of their shared history. She pondered how to reframe the narrative, to speak to Melissa not just as an opponent, but as someone who had once embraced the spirit of this home. Perhaps in that confrontation, she could reclaim not just her space, but the essence of what family had always meant to her. The day of reckoning loomed closer, overshadowed by anxiety, yet punctuated with a newfound purpose. Martha felt invincible as she stood beneath the golden glow of her bakery lights. This was not simply about defending her home, but about defining herself in a world that threatened to diminish her worth. As she prepared herself mentally for the confrontation, each breath a reminder of her inner strength, a new thought emerged. If she could confront Melissa effectively, what would that mean for their future? Could this conflict transform into a catalyst for healing, or would it deepen the fissures between them? Martha's determination morphed into a daunting sense of urgency. The confrontation was no longer a mere clash over property. It had evolved. It now represented a pivotal moment of transformation for her. With every minute ticking down, the tension mounted, and in a flash of insight, she recognized the truth. This was about more than her home. This was about her identity. As the hour of their meeting approached, a haunting question echoed in her mind. What if facing Melissa meant facing parts of herself she had long buried? The door to her bakery swung open, and Martha stepped into the chilling unknown of this impending battle, knowing that sometimes the fight to reclaim one's life may lead to extraordinary revelations about oneself. Would she emerge from this storm with her family intact, or would the encounter irrevocably change everything? Martha drew a deep breath as she pieced together the ingredients for her newest pastry, each deliberate movement centering her mind. The clock ticked forward, but she fought to stay grounded in the here and now. The confrontation would soon unfold, and she needed clarity and purpose. With each flick of her wrist, she shaped dough into something beautiful, pouring her intentions into the very fibers of the pastry. Memories of the laughter she once shared with Melissa echoed through her thoughts, accompanied by the betrayal that now loomed over them like storm clouds. Martha had been a warrior in her own way, but as she recognized, this was different. She wasn't simply going to defend her home. She was fighting for her identity, the very essence of who she believed herself to be.
Time felt ageless as Martha meticulously crafted her desserts, yet the steady rhythm only emphasized the frantic pace of her thoughts. The dough whispered to her secrets. She'd make each pastry sing with her spirit. She thought of how those very pastries had once united them. Now they felt like relics of a past infused with kindness, now tainted by the bitterness of betrayal. As she worked, contemplation turned into self-critique. What am I afraid of? She questioned herself, the words tasting sharp as they left her lips. Would Melissa see her as an adversary or a formidable rival? Could Patricia, her daughter-in-law, understand her place in this battle? Martha recognized that every detail of their dispute was steeped in emotional complexity, and with that understanding came a struggle for composure. In the depths of her resolve, she uncovered an unexpected ally in herself. This isn't weakness, she thought, kneading the dough with renewed vigor. This is strength. The fight wasn't just a matter of property. It was about who she chose to be in the face of someone she had once deemed family. Martha reflexively noted her love for her craft, forcing herself to reframe the narrative in her mind. She decided she would not let this confrontation define her, but rather highlight a transformation. The meetings with Laura had offered grounding insight on presenting her case, yet they had also stirred the fear of being dismissed, of her voice blending into the silence of the legal complaints that could bury her rights under cold, hard paperwork. But if she stayed centered, she could emerge from this stronger. The thought sent a thrill through her. She felt the flickers of power and purpose ignite her spirit, reinforcing the importance of her next steps. Now the anticipation thickened as she opened the bakery doors, admitting the crisp air and faint scent of nearby autumn leaves. Each customer greeting felt like an invitation to embrace her reality. Trade had been steady, and familiar faces brought threads of comfort amidst an impending storm. Just as the bell chimed above the door with a lively jingle, her phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Laura, confirming their meeting time with Melissa. The screen illuminated her face and highlighted the determination in her eyes. "It's time," she whispered. With her heart racing, Martha stood poised for action, rocking on her heels, a blend of excitement and trepidation coursing through her veins. She could either allow the fear of confrontation to suffocate her spirit, or redefine it. Whether Melissa would acknowledge the bond they once shared was uncertain, but Martha vowed to draw from that history, a piece of her identity, into their meeting. Smoothing a flour-dusted hand along her apron, she took one last deep breath. She would soon discover if transparency could bridge the distance, or if the heartache would splinter the very essence of what she had fought to preserve.
Where the path led remained uncertain, yet watching the steam rise from a freshly baked croissant, she understood one thing. She would channel everything she had into standing her ground. As she locked her eyes on the sun setting through the bakery window, the thought gripped her. What if the outcome challenged not only her relationship with Melissa, but ultimately tested her connection with herself? Martha's resolve pulsated within her as she stepped away from her workbench, her heart still thumping in anticipation of the meeting ahead. The familiar space of the bakery felt both grounding and alien, a juxtaposition of comfort and confrontation. Each pastry showcased her dedication, artistry, and undeniable connection to her past, but today they served as a testament to her transformation and resilience. As the clock ticked down, she found herself wandering around the shop, engaging customers while distracting herself from the depths of her nerves. "Just breathe," she murmured, a mantra echoed softly in her mind. The routine of serving coffee, left toasts, and arranging pastries provided a temporary distraction, but also a chance for self-reflection. Would her passion for baking be enough armor against the emotional upheaval about to unfold? "Excuse me, do you have any advice for someone going into a difficult conversation?" a familiar face inquired, a regular patron struggling to decide on a dessert while clearly preoccupied. For a moment, Martha took this invitation and transposed it onto herself. "Honestly," Martha started, surprised by her own boldness, "you have to be true to yourself and speak your truth. Otherwise, the other person gets to create the narrative, and then you're just left to defend it." Surprise rose in the customer's eyes at her raw honesty, and she watched as it prompted a small nod of encouragement. The opportunity to help someone else refocused her own nervous energy into meaningful intent. Her empathy had not dulled, rather it had emerged sharper against the backdrop of her recent struggles. With each small connection she made, Martha felt herself becoming more rooted in her own narrative. The act of reframing her thoughts about the conflict with Melissa transformed into an exploration of her strengths, her creativity, resilience, and unwavering commitment to her craft. She understood now that her experience in the kitchen was paralleled by her impending confrontation. Silently, she reviewed the key points she wanted to convey in their meeting, pulling her focus toward the essential truths that formed the core of her beliefs. The permeability of her emotions began hardening into determination, a strength growing like the dough she needed earlier, a solid foundation. This wasn't just about property or past betrayals. It was also about clarifying her identity to both Melissa and herself. As the minutes dwindled, an internal alarm sounded. It was time. With each step outside the bakery, she felt the cool air breathe life into her resolve. The trees lining the street rustled, as if wishing her courage. She caught glimpses of her reflection in the shop windows, an older woman, marked by experience, but resolute and unapologetic. She relished the experience of being at the threshold of something that felt pivotal, almost monumental. Arriving at the muted tones of the coffee shop that had been chosen for their meeting, Martha inhaled and steadied her hand at the door. She moved inside, the warmth enveloping her like a cocoon, contrasting sharply with the chill of uncertainty. Finding Laura seated at a corner table, she exchanged brief but loaded glances before shifting her gaze to the doorway. As Melissa entered, a wave of nostalgia washed over her, and Martha felt the familiar tug of love intertwined with bitterness.
The years of shared laughter lingered in her mind, briefly eclipsing the fractures their relationship had endured. Now, this was a woman who stood as both an adversary and a reflection of her past, the very essence of a bond now frayed. Approaching the table, Martha tightened her grip on the folder containing her prepared statements, allowing the weight to punctuate her grounding intentions. She could sense the underlying currents of their intertwined histories. The air thickened, charged with the potential for conflict or resolution. "Thank you for coming," Laura began, casting a glance towards Melissa. It was now or never. As the first words crossed Martha's lips, she felt time unite past and present in this significant moment. Amid her confrontation, doubts flickered, whispering attempts to derail her focus. What if Melissa resisted her truth? What if she unleashed a torrent of accusations, spiraling out of control? Resolute, Martha steeled her heart, ready to navigate through the labyrinth of emotions. Yet within, another question simmered. In this confrontation, who would emerge not merely as a fighter, but as a woman rekindling her spirit? As the confrontation unfolded, a new realization darted through her mind. This was not just a moment of defense, but an opportunity to redefine her identity, one where, even in the face of uncertainty, she might find not just strength, but the potential for unexpected connection. Would discovery propel her forward, or would she become entangled in the shadows of their fractured relationship? Martha knew the path ahead would demand profound clarity and honesty. She was ready to steer her journey anew, but at what cost? Martha's voice steadied as she began to articulate her feelings, each sentence a careful construct designed to unravel the tangled web of emotions she had carried for so long. She could see it in Melissa's eyes. Recognition, hurt perhaps, but also a steely resolve. Their history hung in the air, a thick layer over the room as difficult truths began to surface.
"I felt unheard for years," Martha said, watching for flickers of understanding. "Our relationship, what we used to share, was overshadowed by misunderstandings and betrayal." Melissa's expression shifted, a mix of vulnerability and defensiveness surfacing. Instead of flinching away from the confrontation, Martha pressed on, recalling her own insights that had emerged in the bakery moments before the meeting. "I believe we can move forward, but only if we confront our past openly. I don't want to fight. You're family, and I want to be a part of my grandchildren's lives again," she continued, her heart pounding but her resolve unwavering. For a second, the tension dissipated. It was replaced by a palpable silence, leaving space for reflection. Martha's words had landed, sparking hidden sentiments that had long remained buried. She could practically hear the clock ticking in the background, amplifying the weight of the moment. "Family?" Melissa responded, her voice low, trembling at its edges. "I never thought you'd see it that way after everything that happened. I thought you wanted to distance yourself." Martha interrupted, her intuition guiding her instincts. "I distanced myself because I feared the hurt would overwhelm our family, but that was a mistake. I realize now I should have fought for clarity rather than avoidance." As she spoke, Martha felt a strange warmth blossoming in her chest, the release of bottled emotions. With each word, she was dismantling the barriers that had caused so much pain. This confrontation felt different. It was a risk, one she hadn't anticipated embracing, yet here she was, willing to explore the possibility of healing. Melissa's posture softened, her defenses faltering. "I didn't know you felt that way," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought you abandoned us. I resented you for it." In that moment, an unspoken connection bridged the gap. Martha's heart raced as she realized that beneath the resentment, they were both carrying similar burdens. They had both been shaped by loss and misunderstanding. "Let's not allow assumptions to dictate our family dynamics any longer," Martha urged. "Let's build something new, maybe even stronger. I know it won't be easy, but we have to commit to it." Melissa nodded slowly, the flicker of hope igniting in her eyes as she absorbed Martha's authenticity. "Okay," she finally breathed out. "Let's try." The air shifted, the weight of their shared history now punctuated with possibility. Martha felt lightening in her chest, as if a weight she had worn for years was beginning to lift. However, the uneasiness remained. Conflicting thoughts swirled in her mind. Could this newly forged unity withstand the old wounds? Martha remembered the unrelenting ache of betrayal and the uncertainties that nestled in her heart. She couldn't ignore the fear that still lingered. The fear that realizing a connection might lead to deeper vulnerabilities. As she exited the coffee shop, her heart now danced between optimism and residual trepidation, the thrill of potential futures against the sharp recall of past pain. What if their reconciliation was mere illusion? Stepping back into the crisp air, Martha sensed a shift within herself. She was no longer just the woman who had retreated. She was a force who had stood her ground. But as she walked away, the question loomed large. Could she truly trust this fragile rebirth? She hesitated at the threshold, facing her reflection in the glass panes of the bakery window once more. There was determination there, but also uncertainty. The moment felt pivotal, and with it the realization struck her. The journey had only just begun. The stakes had been raised, understanding and clarity had opened new doors, but would she be brave enough to traverse the minefield of family emotions once again? What other secrets lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be unveiled? The tension of possibility lingered, teasing the outline of what was to come. Martha stepped out of the coffee shop, the cold air hitting her face like a wake-up call. Each inhalation felt heavy with the weight of her decision, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling within her. The prospect of reconnecting with Melissa had ignited a flame of hope, yet shadows of doubt loomed ominously, whispering that this newfound understanding could dissipate just as effortlessly as it had emerged. As she walked towards her car, the rhythm of her shoes echoed in sync with her racing thoughts. The clarity she felt inside the cafe had shifted to an undercurrent of anxiety. Yes, she had taken a bold stance, but would it hold up? Could she navigate the choppy waters of family dynamics, armed only with sincerity and an open heart? Arriving at her vehicle, she took a moment to grasp the steering wheel, its cool texture reminding her of the solidity she earned to present. Each moment spent avoiding conflict seemed to recede, replaced by this surge to instigate something better. Yet a simultaneous urge to retreat screamed from within. The familiarity of isolation beckoned like a siren song. Instinctively, she reached for her phone, wanting to share this moment with someone who understood her struggle. All those years cultivating a facade of resilience had made her wary. Who could she confide in? Her relationships, long since frayed, often felt more like a puzzle missing crucial pieces. Who was left to dismantle the walls she'd painstakingly built? With hesitant fingers, she navigated to a contact saved in her phone. It was Sarah, her oldest friend, the one person who'd always lent an ear and never judged. Sarah had witnessed Martha's descent into solitude, had tried coaxing her out with laughter and distraction. Martha inhaled deeply before tapping her name. The phone ringing on the other end felt like a lifeline. "Hey, Martha." Sarah's voice broke through the static of uncertainty. "What's up? Can we talk? It's about family." Martha stumbled over the words, desperately seeking reassurance from a voice that felt like home. "I'm on my way," Sarah replied without hesitation, the warmth of her response softening Martha's furrowed brow. While she waited, Martha considered her reflections in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back appeared both resolute and vulnerable. She didn't want to lose this fragile moment of clarity to fear. After years of feeling like a prisoner to her own emotions, this was a chance to reclaim her narrative, a moment to sculpt her future anew. When Sarah arrived, she embraced Martha tightly, a gesture filled with love and understanding. In that embrace, Martha felt a release, as if the solid walls she had accumulated were cracking, letting in the light. They settled into a nearby diner, the scent of coffee and baked goods wrapping around them like a familiar blanket. As Martha recounted her recent conversation with Melissa, she revealed all the fears and aspirations tethered to their potential reconciliation. "I never thought I'd have to confront this," Martha admitted, an edge of hesitation surfacing. "What if it doesn't work out? What if I end up hurt again?" "Sometimes the risk is the only way to find out what's truly possible," Sarah said softly, yet firmly. The words resonated deeply within Martha, igniting a flicker of courage. Risks were the stepping stones to growth. As the sun set outside, casting warm tones through the diner window, a plan began to form in Martha's mind. This wasn't just about restoring family ties. It was about her healing journey and reclaiming her identity. Yet another wave of apprehension surged within her, as she realized she would need to confront deeper fears too. What was she truly afraid of? Losing Melissa again? Or perhaps discovering the depths of her own vulnerabilities? The chatter around them faded into a buzzing blur as the realization struck Martha, pulling her focus inward. Here she was, on the brink of a profound personal evolution. But could she hash out the unspoken truths she had buried for so long? She clenched her jaw, steeling herself for the truth that lay ahead. The road to healing might shatter her perceptions,
but only then could she dare to build something genuine from the ashes. As they finished their coffees, Martha knew that she stood at a crossroads. A new path stretched out before her, but it was lined with jagged memories and lingering doubts. How much of herself was she willing to expose? The question lingered, heavy in the air, teasing the possibilities of the future, while shadows of her past whispered against the edges of her resolve. The diner buzzed with sporadic laughter and clinking dishes, but to Martha, the noise faded into a distant hum. She pored over her options, the weight of their interaction still settling heavily on her chest.
The transitional gasp of her heart echoed each unspoken thought. This strategy for healing wasn't merely about facing Melissa. It was about acquiring a courage steeped in vulnerability. Martha's thoughts cascaded like an uncontrolled waterfall. Why had she resisted reaching out for so long? Afraid of rejection, yes. But what if, in the process, she had stifled the person she had the potential to be? As these thoughts collided, Martha's mind traveled back to her childhood, where fear and insecurity had taken root, establishing a foundation that had informed years of her adult life. She turned to Sarah, whose attention remained fixed on her. There was no judgment in Sarah's eyes, only encouragement, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone in the struggle. "What do you think I should do next?" Martha asked, her voice beginning to grasp the determination that lingered beneath the surface. "Focus on the positive, Martha. Prepare for the conversation, not just the outcome. Think about what you can bring to the table," Sarah replied thoughtfully, her tone a blend of gentle guidance and assertiveness. The words felt like a key unlocking a door. It struck her suddenly that this was about defining the terms of her own journey, not allowing fear to dictate her narrative anymore. She could document her feelings, lay out her expectations, and truly practice what it meant to be honest with herself and Melissa. However, that would require an earnest confrontation with the uncomfortable truths she had avoided for years. Taking a deep breath, Martha shifted her strategy. She pulled out her phone and opened a notes app, each tap of her fingers echoing both resolve and trepidation. "I need to write this down," she uttered, half to Sarah, half to herself, as the intention crystallized. "Write what?" Sarah asked, her eyebrows arched in curiosity. "A list. Everything I want to say to Melissa," Martha responded, the tremor in her voice revealing an undercurrent of fear. "Perfect. Sometimes putting things down makes it easier to sort through your feelings," Sarah reinforced, her support bolstering Martha's spirit. As Martha began to draft her thoughts, she rediscovered fragments of herself she thought long buried. The long-limiting beliefs started to unravel. She wasn't simply a conduit for conflict. She was capable of conveying love and understanding, of re-envisioning her place within this family dynamics. With every word written, she felt herself decompressing. She remembered old memories of joyful gatherings, whispered secrets shared under the star-dappled sky, and most importantly, the love she had for her daughter. Maybe, just maybe, this path could lead to something redeeming, if only she could navigate it with honesty. Yet the looming question resurfaced. What if vulnerability paved the way to pain instead of resolution? What if after all the effort she faced rejection once more? Could she endure another heartbreak? Martha chided herself internally. These fears, while persistent, were shadows of her past, not of the woman she aspired to be. With Sarah's supportive presence next to her, that shadow faded slightly, replaced by a burgeoning warmth of hope against the winter chill. As they prepared to leave the diner, Martha felt a sinewy connection binding her to her intentions. She had started to clarify not just what she wanted to say, but who she wanted to be in the face of possible discomfort. Still, a tumult of unease danced just below the surface. Even in carving this pathway forward, nothing was guaranteed. They stepped outside, and the cold air rushed around them, stirring Martha's thoughts once more. The weight of her future felt tangible now, shrouded in uncertainty. She glanced at Sarah, a single word teetering on her lips. Trust. But trust had many facets, and she had her own history of betrayal, and reconnecting with that trust would demand vigilance and bravery. With this renewed clarity, she contemplated her next steps and the profound implications they held. Nothing about this journey promised to be easy, yet the call of growth beckoned her forward. As they walked toward the car, her thoughts lingered on Melissa and the emotional truths that lay within that conversation. The horizon of her relationship strung out ahead,
vibrant and full of potential, yet shadowed by lingering doubts. In that moment of anticipation, a new, unsettling realization emerged. Was she prepared to confront the bitter resentment buried within her heart? The ultimate answer to that question loomed, drawing her closer to a confrontation that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The hardest yet most necessary part of healing lay just ahead, waiting for her to take a step into the unknown. Would she embrace the forthcoming chaos, or would she allow the fears of the past to bind her once again? The chilling wind nipped at Martha's cheeks as she climbed into the car, each gust echoing the uncertainty that still trembled within her. Sarah followed, starting the engine, the soft hum of the vehicle momentarily grounding Martha amidst a storm of emotions. This was more than a car ride. It was a transition, a step forward, and her mind was a battleground of nerves and aspirations. "Do you have any idea what you'll say?" Sarah asked, glancing at Martha as she shifted in her seat. "I have some thoughts, but they feel jumbled," she admitted, biting her lip. The weight of approaching clarity lingered on the outskirts of her consciousness, teasing but not fully present. "Why don't we practice?" Sarah suggested, her voice light yet encouraging. "Practice?" Martha echoed, feeling a flicker of resistance. "Yes, it's just a talk with Melissa. You don't have to get it perfect," Sarah assured her, but apprehension simmered within Martha. But even as doubt whispered, a different part of her, the part longing for connection, nodded. "All right, let's do it."
As they navigated through familiar streets lined with trees stripped bare from the winter's grasp, Martha took a deep breath, channeling the courage she felt in the diner. "Okay, I'll start. Hey, Melissa, I want to talk about, well, everything." "Good. What's next?" Sarah urged, her enthusiasm palpable. Martha hesitated, the scene in her mind shifting. She could picture Melissa, arms crossed, a defensive stance ready to launch. "I need to tell her how hurt I was when—" "Wait," Sarah interrupted gently. "Try approaching it from a perspective of curiosity rather than defensiveness. Ask her how she feels." Taking this advice, Martha adjusted her approach. "I want to understand where you're coming from. Can you share what you're feeling?" The words hung in the air like a lifeline, tethering Martha to the present moment. She was stepping into the unknown, and for the first time, it didn't feel as daunting. "You're doing great," Sarah cheered, her voice a buoy in turbulent waters. "Now, how do you resolve the feelings around your past?" Martha's heart pounded as she wrapped her mind around the enormity of how to resolve years of hurt and resentment. "I want to tell her I've been disappointed, that I haven't felt valued as a mother-in-law," she articulated slowly, attempting to quell the rising tide of her emotions. "Good," Sarah encouraged, "but be careful to express your needs without blame. It's about sharing, not attacking." Martha nodded, absorbing the lesson as she articulated her grievances with the careful precision of a surgeon. "I love you, Melissa, and I want to be part of this family, but I felt pushed aside." As her thoughts poured out, Martha began to visualize the exchange. She didn't just see herself speaking, she imagined the potential of understanding blossoming between them, the possibility of light cutting through the fog of misunderstanding. But alongside that image was an equally vivid image of rejection, a reeling moral tug-of-war that left her breathless. The car slowed to a halt outside her home, but the moment felt urgent, suspended in time. "You'll find a way to navigate that discomfort," Sarah murmured, sensing Martha's ambivalence. Martha stepped out of the car, the weight of the moment dawning on her like an impending storm. She had begun to work through the emotional quagmire, but the potent fear of rejection remained, dancing at the edges of her resolve. Would confronting hers and Melissa's past dispel the shadows or deepen them? "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her eyes steady and patient. Martha's heart pounded. She took a long breath, filling her lungs with intention. "Ready to try," she replied, the determination in her voice steadying her nerves. As she approached the door, uncertainty flooded her senses. Would the conversation potentially fracture the fragile threads they had, or would it weave something new, something stronger? With her hand poised to knock, she felt the weight of years of silence and pain pressing down on her.
Yet within that weight lay the possibility of hope. Would she face this threshold or let the old patterns of fear shackle her? In that electrifying moment, the decision loomed before her, pregnant with consequences, yet alive with potential. The answers awaited her on the other side, but the journey to reach them had just begun. Would she find the courage to open the door? Martha stood at the threshold, frozen by an amalgamation of fear and anticipation. She had rehearsed what felt like countless times, yet the gravity of the moment made every ounce of resolve seem tenuous. Her heart pounded steadily against her ribs, urging her forward, reminding her of the significance this conversation held. With a deep breath, she knocked, the sound reverberating through her consciousness like thunder. Each second stretched into eternity as she waited, mind racing through scenarios both painful and hopeful. Would Melissa answer, or would she simply turn away, reinforcing the alienation that had taken root over the years? The door swung open, revealing Melissa's surprised expression, the hint of defensiveness creeping into the frame of her demeanor. "Martha," she said, her tone caught between confusion and courtesy, "what brings you here?" "Can I come in?" Martha's voice wavered slightly, betraying her nerves. She held on to Sarah's advice. Approach with curiosity. Let the conversation flow without the burden of blame. Melissa stepped back, allowing Martha to cross the threshold. The air inside felt thick with unspoken tensions and past grievances, each corner of the room echoing moments of estrangement. As they settled into the living room, Martha's eyes swept over family photos that told stories of joy, intertwined with the flickering shadows of sorrow. "Thanks for seeing me," Martha began, striving to keep her tone light, yet aware that the gravity of her intentions weighed heavily on the room. "I wanted to talk about our relationship." "Is there something wrong?" Melissa asked, her facade of calm starting to fracture, revealing a hint of vulnerability. Martha wrestled with her thoughts, choosing her words with gravitas. "I think there's been a misunderstanding between us, and I would like to clear the air." Melissa's arms folded instinctively, creating an invisible barrier that Martha felt immediately. Digesting the defensive posture, she shifted her approach, leaning into curiosity. "I'd like to know how you feel about us. What seems to be the problem from your perspective?" A flicker of surprise crossed Melissa's face, relinquishing some tension as she responded. "I thought you were just judging everything I did. I didn't know how to invite you in without feeling undermined." "I didn't intend to undermine you," Martha countered softly, her heart aching as she recognized the pain behind those words. "I feel like I've been trying to reach out, but it often feels like I'm not being heard." The conversation hinged on the precipice of vulnerability. Martha could see Melissa's resolve wavering, shadows of long-held resentment swirling amongst the sunlight spilling through the window. "I want to feel connected to you, as family, but I also need you to know how hurt I've been feeling, like I'm on the outside looking in." The silence that followed was pregnant with possibilities. Martha's mind raced through the emotions that had clouded their exchanges and the importance of this moment. If she allowed herself to be fully present, a spark of authenticity could ignite the change they both craved. "I didn't realize how much you wanted to be included," Melissa admitted finally, her tone softening as she unfolded her arms. "Maybe we can work on this together." Martha seized the opportunity, feeling the tide shift in her favor. "It's about building trust again, Melissa. Can we navigate these feelings without blaming each other?" The weight of their shared history bore down heavily in that moment, yet for the first time, Martha felt hopeful. They could build something anew, forging a future rooted in understanding rather than resentment. Yet as they began to discuss the specifics of rebuilding that connection, the heavy specter of past misunderstandings loomed just behind them. With each revelation and decision, her resolve grew stronger. But as Martha unveiled deeper reflections on her own feelings of inadequacy, she was suddenly struck by an unforeseen realization about her own patterns. There was a troubling truth lurking beneath her attempts at clarity. Was she projecting her own insecurities onto Melissa? "Maybe we both need to let go of past hurts and be more open," Melissa proposed tentatively, the shift palpable in the air. As Martha contemplated this, the thought settled uncomfortably in her mind. What if her need for acceptance had been inadvertently harming the very connection she sought to nurture? How deep did her insecurities run? As the conversation continued, threads of clarity began to weave together, but the question lingered in her heart. Could they truly navigate not only their past, but also the hidden echoes of Martha's own insecurities? In that moment, surrounded by both the familial warmth and the chill of unresolved issues, Martha faced a seminal decision. Would she confront her patterns, or would she retreat into the comfort of familiarity, risking the opportunity for true growth? With every heartbeat, the conversation promised revelations, both thrilling and terrifying, awaiting her next move. Martha exhaled slowly, the weight of her revelations hanging in the air like smoke. The mixed emotions swirling within her reached a crescendo as she dared to confront this transformative space.
She was not merely there to address grievances. She was standing at the juncture of identity, a mother, a woman, a fighter reclaiming her narrative. Maybe we both need to learn how to connect in a way we've never truly tried, Martha proposed, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty lurking beneath. She recognized that her past hesitations had often masked profound truths she needed to explore. For so long I've been ready to give you advice and support, but perhaps I've been too blind to see your struggles. Melissa's gaze softened, and a flicker of recognition passed between them. I think I've focused so much on my own fear that I didn't realize you were feeling this way too. The cocoon of defensiveness around Melissa began to dissipate, replaced by an openness that Martha had long yearned for. This fight, this claim to my home, it's been less about physical space and more about who I am, Martha continued, finding her footing in this new territory they were navigating together. After all I've given, it felt like I was losing the essence of a relationship I treasured. With every word spoken, she felt herself unburdening, a release of emotions tied tightly within her heart. Melissa's response was deliberate, a careful unspooling of the tensions that had caught them both in anger and disappointment. Maybe we've been afraid to express our true needs, Melissa admitted, her voice quivering. For so long I felt criticized, but I also didn't see how my actions must have hurt you. Can we forgive each other? Martha felt a rush of warmth flooding her being. It was as though a light indeed broke through the thick clouds that had obscured their relationship for far too long. Yes, she replied, sincerity lacing her words. Forgiveness opens the door for healing. I want to do this with you. I want to rebuild trust and be part of this family once again. In that moment, an evolution flickered between them, transforming a painful confrontation into a dawning partnership in healing. They were two women, each carrying her own accumulated pain, yet now bound by the threads of shared experience. The challenge was daunting, but Martha's resolve was strong. She believed their connection could be renewed. She would make it so. As they continued to discuss concrete steps toward rekindling their relationship, insecurities began to unravel within Martha. She recognized how showing vulnerability could be the bridge to a deeper bond. I'll be truthful, she shared, her voice firm. I need to feel valued, heard, and respected. Melissa nodded, her expression shifting toward understanding. And I need to be reassured that I'm not under your microscope. You and I can be allies, not adversaries. Martha felt a spark of confidence, each word solidifying her sense of self. This wasn't just about the bakery or the house. It was about reclaiming her position within her family and affirming her value as a mother-in-law and a woman. A feeling of recognition washed over her. She was not only defended her rights, she was standing firmly in her truth, transcending the confines of her past self. With clear expectations and reaffirmed boundaries set, Martha felt satisfaction swell within her, an unshakable recognition of her own worth. She had accomplished something monumental. She walked into that coffee shop intent on defending her territory, but she emerged with a promise to herself. She would be an advocate for her emotional well-being and a constant participant in forging a connection with family. As they left the cafe, a notable shift in the atmosphere surrounded them. The warm glow of the afternoon sun bathed Martha in reassurance. She took a moment to reflect on the journey that lay behind her and imagined the vibrant road ahead. The shadows of resentment began to fade, replaced by the golden hues of understanding and compassion.
With genuine excitement, she realized that her journey was unfolding, promising not just personal growth, but a rebirth of the familial connections she cherished. The transformative experience had equipped her with self-confidence, and she cherished the magnitude of the moment. Martha turned to Melissa, her heart buoyed by hope. "Shall we start anew?" "Absolutely," Melissa replied, her voice resonating with sincerity. As they exchanged tentative yet hopeful smiles, Martha acknowledged not just her effort, but the newfound clarity she had forged within herself. She had stepped through the threshold of confrontation, emerging not only as the woman who confronted her family, but as a woman who reclaimed her identity, a woman capable of love, connection, and unapologetic strength. Emboldened by her resilience, she understood her worth had been reaffirmed. She had conquered her fears and emerged victorious. This was no longer merely a matter of fighting for her home. It was about building a foundation of trust and connection, one carefully layered with understanding and sprinkling of forgiveness. As they moved forward, Martha left the shadows of her past anchored behind and embraced the future, each step forward a testament to her transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that empower you to reclaim your own narrative. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. You need to show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about Martha's journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share, because true fans of overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting these journeys.